What's up, everybody? It's a new morning. Got my shackles just mocked together here. Nothing's tight yet, but I did put that monkey snot or gorilla snot on the bushings so they don't squeak. Again, everything's just, the bolts are just on there, just hand tight. They're not tightened up yet. With the suspension stuff, you don't want to tighten anything until it's on its own weight on the ground, with tires on the ground, of course. That way, if you were to tighten this stuff up just as it is at full droop right here, it would tend to bind when you went and put it on the ground. In other words, it wouldn't relax. And you want this stuff to be neutral when you tighten it up, meaning at ride height. So, not rocket science, but you can kind of think about how that works. I think I showed these brackets yesterday. These go to the spine, that bump stop spine that goes across here. I'm going to leave that off until we get the cab on the frame. And I got my first radius arm on here. I have a cross member, another cross member that goes from here to there. It's a tubular one. I haven't had it powder coated yet, so I'm not going to put it on. I do have to make another batch of powder coating, or send another batch out rather. And then got my other radius arm here. Since we removed these guys before powder coat, I have to run them back in with I have the soft jaws on the vise over there. Just basically clamp it right here and then run these guys in. Just by memory, I basically run these guys all the way in until about 2 threads are showing. Just past the lock nut or the jam nut. That's the set point there where you want 2 threads showing. Now this doesn't apply to anything but this particular build, and I just know that from memory after putting it together the first time. The caster is actually built into these radius arms. I don't know what the number is or the degrees, but it is in fact, it's pretty darn spot on. But yeah, so I'm just gonna run this big hind joint in. This is a FK rod end. It's a JM16, which means it's a 16 millimeter. But yeah, you can see the FK right there and USA. These things are pretty big. They do have a little play in them, just the slightest amount, nothing to really worry about. Just a tiny bit. So I'm gonna run those. I'm not racing this truck. If I was racing, I might obviously replace them, but I am not, so they'll be fine. Until they have an actual measurable amount of play in them, I'm gonna just roll with it. So it's kind of an unusual situation here. The truck build, none of the stuff is really worn out. I did have a transmission problem when I did roll the truck, but I was just out there because I wanted to run it that day. But had transmission issues. The trans has since been rebuilt, but everything else on the truck, I mean, aside from some unusual wear on the brake pads, there's nothing really worn out on this truck. I did find some rusty bearings, just probably due to a bad seal or an inner seal on the hub, but other than that, the truck's still new, I guess you could say, or still all the working parts are actually in really good shape, so no need to replace anything, honestly. But I do need some spring pins. I had to put a temporary pin in this guy here, which is just a grade 8 bolt just to keep the leaves together. So I'll put 2 C-clamps on that and replace that. I gotta find it's like a 3/8 spring pin with the right head diameter. But I have to mic the housing hole and all that stuff. But I'll show you guys that when I do it. But that's the latest update. I'm gonna throw this other radius arm on now. Here's a decision you're gonna have to make when you're building an off-road truck, whether it's a rock truck, crawler, mud truck, pre-runner, whatever. This is in fact a pre-runner of vintage age, but still in fact designed for the desert. But when you have these big old rod ends, they I don't know of any that are sealed. There could be, but this one in fact does have a Zerk fitting, and that is the name of these. This might not be an actual Zerk brand, but I call them Zerk fittings. You might think putting it down here would be a lot more serviceable. True, and especially at ride height, it'd be a lot more accessible. But I'm choosing to put this Zerk fitting up here. I could still get not even a 90-degree Zerk hose onto it, but I think it's a better move to put the Zerk fitting on the top, especially if we hit any debris on the bottom. I think it's a better move. They actually were on the bottom in the last iteration of the truck, so I'm going with the top. So you got to think about this stuff when you're putting it together. What makes the most sense? And serviceability, in my opinion, is one of the best things that you can afford yourself going down the line. So this stuff does need to be maintained. So just a little food for thought.